There is a medical condition called housemaid's knee. That is its real name in the textbooks. Prepatellar bursitis. The small fluid sac in front of the kneecap swells until the joint will not fold. Doctors did not coin that name as a joke. They named it after the patients who kept arriving with it. An entire class of English women knelt on stone floors so consistently for so many years that their knees turned into a diagnosis.
In 1891, the census of England and Wales counted 1,444,000 indoor domestic servants. All but 58,000 of them were women. That is not a corner of Victorian life. It is the largest single occupation in the country, bigger than coal mining, bigger than the cotton mills. Roughly a third of every working woman in England was doing it. They lived inside the houses they cleaned, in attic rooms under the slates, or on a mattress laid in the kitchen. And in the census returns, most of them survive as exactly 3 pieces of information: a first name, an age, and 2 words: general servant. No letters, no photographs, nothing in their own hand. The women who ran the entire machinery of 19th century respectability are missing from the record of it, almost entirely. One of them wrote it all down, every day, for about 40 years.
She was born in Shifnal, in Shropshire, in 1833, and she was in service by the age of 8, farm work, a pot girl in a public house, a nursery maid, a third under housemaid. Then the job that absorbed more Victorian women than any other, maid of all work, 1 servant, 1 house, and everything in it. Her name was Hannah Cullwick, and the reason we have her is uncomfortable. In 1854, she met a barrister named Arthur Munby, who spent his free time seeking out working women and questioning them about their labor, and who asked her to keep a diary. She kept it for 4 decades. So the fullest surviving account of an ordinary maid's working day exists because a gentleman found it interesting. On the 16th of July, 1860, she set the day down, opened the shutters, lit the kitchen fire, swept and dusted the rooms and the hall, carried breakfast up, cleaned 2 pairs of boots, made the beds, emptied the slops, meaning the chamber pots, washed the breakfast things, cleaned the plate, cleaned the knives, carried dinner up, cleared it away, scrubbed the kitchen, unpacked a hamper, to bed at 11.
Every line on that list has a weight you have to picture properly. The kitchen range was blackleaded, coated in graphite paste and buffed to a shine before the fire was lit, which meant before anyone in the house was awake. The fire irons were rubbed with brick dust, and in most houses there was no plumbing above the ground floor, so hot water reached a bedroom exactly one way. A woman carried it up the stairs in cans. So did the coal. So did dinner from a basement kitchen, up 2 or 3 flights, under a cover, several times a day. The building itself was designed around her. Back stairs, service corridors, a door faced in green cloth to muffle the noise of the kitchen. In some large households, the rule went further, and a housemaid who met the family on the stairs turned and faced the wall until they had passed. Be careful with that one. It comes from memoirs and the rule books of particular great houses, not from any law, and historians argue about how widespread it ever was. The architecture is not in dispute. These houses were engineered to move a woman through them without anyone having to look at her. In 1861, a 25-year-old woman named Isabella Beeton published 1,100 pages of instructions for running a household, and near the front she put a table of wages. A maid of all work, 9 to 14 pounds a year, if the family did not supply her tea, sugar, and beer, 7 to 11 pounds if they did, board and lodging on top of that. Treat the table with some suspicion, though, because it is advice, not evidence. Beeton was telling nervous middle-class mistresses what they ought to pay in and around London. Real wages varied enormously by region and climbed across the century. Beeton herself died 4 years later, at 28. But the money is not the cruel part. Wages that low were survivable, just because the job came with a roof and food, and because a girl of 14 was sending most of it home anyway. The cruel part is what happened when a servant decided she had had enough and walked out of the door. or rather what happened in the next house when she tried to get hired again. A servant did not have a reference. She had a character. A statement from her last employer about her honesty, her sobriety, and her conduct, spoken or written, and without it she was very close to unhireable in any respectable house in the country. There was no legal obligation on any employer to provide one. None. A mistress could simply refuse, or damn a woman in 6 words over a broken plate, a rumor, or nothing at all. And if a servant considered writing her own, Parliament had shut that door long before. The Servants' Characters Act received royal assent on the 15th of June, 1792, and it made counterfeiting a character or lying about who you had worked for a criminal offense. Read those 2 facts side by side. Your employer could not be compelled to give you a character. You could be prosecuted for supplying one yourself. Only a single successful prosecution under that act is recorded, in 1910. It stayed on the statute book until 2008. Its power was never in the courtroom. Its power was that every servant in England knew it was there. Which brings us to a building in Bloomsbury, and to the saddest paperwork in London. The Foundling Hospital did not simply take in abandoned babies. A woman had to petition. She wrote, or had written for her, an account of how she had come to be pregnant and unmarried, and then she was interviewed, and a committee decided whether she was respectable enough to deserve help. Thousands of those petitions survive. In the mid-Victorian files, the overwhelming majority of the women who succeeded were domestic workers. One analysis puts it at around 64%. That number needs handling honestly. It is not a measurement of how often servants were assaulted. It reflects who applied. And a servant who became pregnant lost her wages, her bed, her character, and her entire future in a single afternoon, in a house where she lived and slept among the people she worked for. It also reflects what the hospital wanted to hear, because these petitions were written to pass a respectability test. They are shaped documents. They are also the closest thing we have to these women speaking.
Here is the strongest argument against everything I have just told you. Women kept choosing it. Historians including Lucy Delap and Selina Todd have pushed hard against the pure victim version of domestic service, and they have a case. Servants moved constantly, a year in one place, 18 months in the next, and employers spent the whole century complaining about the servant problem, which is what a labor shortage sounds like from above. Set against the sweated needle trades or a match factory, service meant a bed, a fire, and meat. Some women rose to housekeeper and ran a household budget larger than their father ever saw. Denying them that is its own kind of condescension. And then look at what they asked for the moment they could organize. In 1910, the Domestic Workers' Union of Great Britain launched, with a cook named Grace Neal as General Secretary. In 1913, a Glasgow servant called Jessie Stephen founded a Scottish federation, negotiated directly with employers, and won her members 2 hours off a day. 2 hours. That was the victory.
Hannah Cullwick married Arthur Munby in January 1873. She kept her own name. She told almost no one. And then she carried on living in his chambers in the inner temple as his servant, scrubbing his floors, because she did not want to be a lady, and said so plainly. They separated in 1877. She went back north and back into service. She died in 1909. Her diaries are now in the library at Trinity College, Cambridge, roughly 1 million words in the handwriting of a woman who started work at 8. They exist because a man asked her for them. Nearly 1.5 million others were never asked.
That is the shape of the problem with this century. The houses survive, the account books survive, the advice manuals survive by the shelf full. The women who kept all of it running survive as 3 words on a census page. We spend most of our time here on the records that very nearly did not make it at all. There are more of them than you would expect.